Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today is going to be a little different. If you're new to the channel, my name is Keith Mangum, and I am a millennial dreamer who has moved to Paris to completely change his career by studying pastry and hopefully becoming a pastry chef. But along the way, I'm trying to make a lot of content to follow my journey, but also to share a space for us to be more reflective and to be more observant about life. So no better place than today to talk about one of my favorite passions and hobbies outside of pastry, which is photography. Photography has become one of the most rewarding creative hobbies in my life. And the act of photography for me, composition, exposure, color, and storytelling has become a way to train my eye to be more observant and to appreciate what's happening all around me all the time. Before I got into photography, I feel like the world would just pass me by. But once I started learning the basic principles and practicing them, I began to notice details I never would have seen otherwise. Suddenly, I could spot beautiful compositions that otherwise would have passed me by without a second thought. And what I love about photography is you don't need to have the most expensive, the latest gear. You can have a super old film camera that is tried and true. You could save up and spend a little money and get a mirrorless digital camera. My favorite is Fujifilm. Or you can have a very cheap point and shoot, like this long weekend 35mm simple point and shoot fun camera that has really captured some very beautiful and amazing moments in my life. And of course, we all have amazing cameras just in our pocket every day. Honestly, some of my favorite photos are just shot with my iPhone on a beautiful morning out when the lighting is perfect, the clouds are just right, and the sun is giving a beautiful wash of color to create the perfect memory of what was an otherwise very normal and ordinary stroll with my dog. The TLDR of this video is that the practice of observation, storytelling, and composition are for everyone. I hope that you can take on board some of these principles so that you can create a practice of your own to better capture and observe the world around you with enough rich detail, color, and drama to piece back together the stories of your life. So for today's video, and as a way to teach you some of the basic concepts that I've learned to lean on, I'm gonna take you out for a little photo tour around Paris. We'll try to get up early and take you on a sunrise photo tour where you can practice a lot of different exposure techniques, motion blur, and other things that requires lower levels of light to allow for you to experiment with shutter speed and aperture. So stick around, like and subscribe, and drop a comment below if you struggle with anything related to photography, and I will try to help you out. Okay, it is still obviously very dark, and I look very tired, but sunrise is probably one of the most fun times to go out for a photo walk because the light is constantly changing, and so you can play around with different exposures, different shutter speeds, and something you can do in the morning that's hard to do anytime else is to capture motion blur. So I'm gonna try and do a little bit of that now while the light is very dark and see what I can get. So basically, exposure comes down to three things: aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. And you should consider that each of those is their own slider that you can move up or down to modify how much light that particular setting is letting in to your sensor. So first, aperture is how small or big the opening is that your camera creates when you click the shutter. So you want to think about this in terms of the lower your aperture, the larger the number. So an f2 is super wide open. It's going to let a lot of light in very quickly, versus an f16 or f22 will be a much smaller opening, and so therefore there's a lot less light getting in. If you're in a low light situation and you have to use an f/22, you need to leave that opening open for a long time because it's such a small amount of space to let light in, versus in low light settings, it'll be a lot easier to use a very small f-stop too, because then a lot of light will come in a lot more quickly. Shutter speed is just exactly that. It's the speed at which your shutter opens and closes. So again, this really helps you manage how much light is coming in depending on the situation that you want. So like I said, if you want a lot of motion, then you need to leave your shutter speed open to capture that motion. But if you want to freeze motion, like a waterfall, or perhaps you're doing some photography for sports where you need to freeze someone in that extension, or a race car coming around the track, you need a super fast shutter speed so that everything freezes. And then ISO, which I think is kind of the most abstract, is basically how sensitive are you allowing your sensor to be. And the lower the ISO, the less sensitive the sensor will be to light. In the old film days, you would actually need to choose your ISO for the entire roll of film. So when you think about Portra 400 or Ektachrome 100, that 100 and the 400 are referring to the sensitivity of the film. 100 being a lot less sensitive, 400 being more sensitive, and something like Kodak Max 800 would be the most sensitive of those three examples. And it really helps you manage your light situation when perhaps you are constricted in terms of what f-stop you can use or what shutter speed you can use. So if you're constricted in terms of what shutter speed you can use or what f-stop you can use, depending on what vibe you're going for, ISO is your third lever, and you can bump it up higher if you need to have a very narrow aperture opening or you really want a quick shutter speed. ISO bumped up can allow your camera to become more sensitive to the light that does manage to get it. So it can really help you expose your image in certain constraints. There are people coming now and I'm getting anxious and nervous. Sorry. Pardon. Okay, so the weather is not really cooperating with me. It's quite cloudy, which could be cool, could be a vibe. But I think I'm done with the bridge scenes. I'm gonna try to go to Rue de l'Université, because apparently it has a nice, interesting framing of the Eiffel Tower. So I'm gonna head there and see what we can get. I'm gonna try to teach you about another two concepts called the rule of thirds and leading lines, which I might have captured in some of my early morning pictures, but just in case, let's go to the new location and really focus on examples of doing that well and not. All right, so let's get started. I think the first thing I want to show you all is all of the things that I did with motion blur, because I got a little bit obsessed and kept trying to do it. So let's dive right in. Okay, so now here I've warmed up a little bit and I found a cool spot where there was an interesting composition in terms of seeing the start of the Alexandre-Poix Bridge, which was well lit and then has the moody sky behind it. But then the crosswalk is there, which is kind of drawing your eye into the middle of the photo, which is where all of the light streaks are happening. So again, I lowered the ISO to make my sensor less sensitive, to allow enough time for the shutter to be open to catch the light streaks, while also still exposing for the main subjects of the image, which are this beautiful tower, the road, the crosswalk, some of the lights on the bridge, and then a little bit of the sky. And so then right after I took those two, I had a really lucky moment where a huge city bus came and turned the corner and sort of wrapped itself around me. So I quickly held open my shutter button and let the whole bus go past me. And it created this really cool, awesome, huge light streaks in front of the bridge and the tower. And I just really love the teal and orange mix here, which are usually great complementary colors for photo color grading. And so yeah, this one's really cool and just got really lucky. All right, so now I wanted to move on to tracking motion blur. So this is where you are actually following your subject with the camera at the same speed that they're moving past a certain point in front of you, so that you try to capture them as clearly in focus as possible and leaving the background in blur. It really adds a sense of dynamism and movement to the photo. So I definitely spent a lot of time trying to do this with the numerous runners and cyclists and cars that were zooming past me all morning. So this was the first, I think, pretty good attempt here. You can see I was focusing on the cyclist in the back. That's where I was tracking my focus, or where I was pointing my camera and trying to match her speed. So she's pretty good in terms of focus, and the whole background is blurred, and even her companion is a little bit more blurred than she is because she's closer to my camera and I wasn't tracking for him. So yeah, I think this is a pretty good first attempt to show you all, and I really like the vibe that it gives. But then let's get into what I think are the two best examples of me having done tracked motion blur properly. So this first one is this cyclist who was coming right in front of me, and this one I just didn't get nervous and started tracking from far away, and then followed them for a long time until they got right in front of me, and then I snapped the picture. And you can see here that the cyclist is pretty well captured in terms of focus, and yet the background is fully blurred. And the colors are good, it's exposed well. So I think this was one of the more successful things that I captured today. And then just lastly, this picture of the SUV, I just happened to be leaving the first spot and going to the second spot and saw that this SUV was coming my way, and I was already stopped at a crosswalk, so I just said, let's try it. So quickly got my camera out, panned with the car, and snapped this picture as it got in front of me. And it's pretty good. The whole car looks really nice and still and in focus. The wheels, however, are blurred in a nice way. And if you zoom in, the guy in the car almost looks like I've inserted him with CGI because he's so normal looking. So yeah, really chuffed with this one as well. So here is another couple of examples for the use of lines in your photos. So when I say leading lines, it's that you look for natural geometry in your surroundings, whether that be a railway, the roofs of buildings, or in this case, some of the lines that are actually painted onto the street, to either pull your eye in towards a particular subject or to help guide you to some other part of the photo. Or in this case, what I felt like the leading lines did is help give a sense of momentum to the subjects. So on the left-hand side, you see that this biker is going slightly fast, therefore he's a little bit blurred as compared to the background. And then the leading lines coming towards the camera and widening as they get closer to where I took the photo makes you feel like this biker is zooming towards you. On the right-hand side, it's another, I think, good example of the lines being interesting in the photo because you have the lines widening again as they get closer to the camera. And so it's almost as if the road is opening up to us. And the lines bring us to the subject, which are these two friends who are having a friendly chat while they are having their morning run. And right after this picture, the girl on the right-hand side spotted me and then started waving. So I had to wave back and then put my camera away because I got nervous. All right, and finally, I did mention using the rule of thirds. Now, looking back at all of my photos today, I'm not sure that I really nailed the use of this principle or practice, but generally it's trying to get across the idea that it's more pleasing to the eye if you think about overlaying a grid of 9 squares into what is your viewfinder or your image. And you think about utilizing the top third or the bottom third, the left third or the right third, as a place to really target where your subject should be so that things aren't always just dead center. Sometimes when you really want to spotlight something, dead center works well, but I think often our eyes are more interested in a more dynamic composition. And so using those thirds grid lines is very helpful. So in these examples, you can see that on the left-hand side, I just threw the Eiffel Tower sort of in the middle of my frame. You've got 2 buildings coming in. It's a little bit crowded. It's not giving a sense of story really, aside the fact that maybe it's just saying that, hey, look, the Eiffel Tower is popping up behind these buildings. Whereas on the examples to your right, you can see that I've tried to place the subject the third on the right. So in the middle picture, which is just a reframing of the first picture, It's now kind of showing that there are two main subjects. It's the building that is here, it's grounded, it's showing that it's very old, it's part of France's history. And then you have this towering Eiffel Tower that almost looks like it's leaning down over the buildings to impose itself on it, to show that there's this other competing part of history that is trying to steal the limelight, if I'm trying to create a narrative out of this picture, which I might be doing too much. But to me, at least, it invites me to try to tell a story, to think about what am I trying to portray with this, whereas the first one to the left is just kind of, I don't know, it's just boring. And then lastly, on the right, I was walking my way to the metro before the rain started, and I happened to see this composition, which also kind of built on the middle picture. So you have this main subject, which is this beautiful Haussmannian building on the corner, a really cool vintage car in the bottom right. And then again, using this right-hand third of the picture, I'm highlighting the Eiffel Tower that's kind of towering off in the distance. And here, because I'm farther away, the scale of the tower to the house isn't as exaggerated as in the second picture, but I still like having the subject sort of off to the right as opposed to trying to make the Eiffel Tower dead set in the middle. So that's rule of thirds. I'm sure that I could have had better examples of this, but yeah, the weather got the best of me. So I hope that you liked today's video. It's quite a departure for me. I'm not used to doing these types of tutorials, but as part of this 7-video challenge that I'm doing with Ali Abdal and his YouTuber Academy, the concept for our third video was really to try to teach an audience something about our passions. So let me know in the comments if you like this type of video. I think I could definitely see myself doing this again, maybe with some patisserie recipes, or maybe I could get into how I edit my photos if that's something that's interesting to you. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed. Thanks for coming to the channel again, and see you all soon.